Mixing with Mike plugin of the week comes from Pulsar Modular. It's the P19 Igloo, a recoil compressor. Recoil meaning that what it compensates for is the fact that when compressors start to compress heavily, it often squashes or loses its punch and its aliveness. You can find often in broadcast limiters, old broadcast limiters like the stay level that were used for AM radio, or even some of the limiters like Fairchild and the LA2A, where you can have a significant amount of gain reduction and it doesn't feel like it's swallowing everything up. It still feels like there's some dynamics. So I think that the recoil compression is capturing some of those aspects for those from those compressors. When you get into a purely digital compressor, this is stuff that just gets the snot squashed out of it. So this is compensating for that. Now, this is, I don't know, the sister or brother of the P11 Abyss plugin. And the Abyss plugin is probably a bit more focused on the RMS side of things, a bit warmer, a bit more evening out. This is more of a peak compressor. And so they kind of go side by side. They sort of complement each other really well based on what you have need for. So we'll go over the basic GUI here, and then we'll kind of dive into some audio examples. The typical stuff or classic stuff here, and you can actually display this or shrink the display down to the basic size or the easy size, which will give you the basic settings. And then if you open up the full here, you can open up the full setting. It also has an alternate graphic, which is darker. I kind of prefer this. It looks more like an Igloo to me. All right, so we have an attack time and a release time and a threshold. These are all together here. If you click on the little stair thing here, what it'll do is it'll give you a full movement, right, or flexibility with the attack and release settings. And otherwise, it will go into stepped increments. So this will get you, may get you into a bit more of an accurate place, depending upon, how you want to work it. I like this kind of option. I generally kind of go into whole steps, like whole ratios and, whole number release times and things like that anyway. So I kind of like that feature. That's available there. We have a link control. This also has the linked stepped settings here, where you can link the left and right side. Sidechain, so that can sometimes, for certain things, as you'll see in the examples, open things up. Depending upon the differences between left-right content, or it can actually kind of mono things up a little bit if the sidechain is together, getting the compression to work for both sides. Based on the situation, one can work better than the other. Ratio, we have a ratio selection here, 1.5 to 1 up to 40 to 1. There's a field control that gives you like an alternate feeling to the ratio. Now, there's sort of an interesting thing because ratio is just a ratio, but there's a big relationship, particularly with the ratio, the knee control, right, and the threshold, right, and the way that all three of those sort of interact with each other shapes the front part of the transient. And then the attack time would be how you shape the transient itself. And, and then the release time is obviously the recovery from all of that. But we have a couple of other controls here, which are sort of interesting. So the ratio, pretty straightforward. We have a knee hard to soft, okay? So the field control offers like some kind of alternate feeling, maybe very, I don't know, it may be not the most obvious thing, and sometimes it stands out. So we'll kind of do a little comparison there in some of the examples and see which one feels better, for lack of a better term. There's also one here called PSI, which would be pounds per square inch, and this actually changes the characteristics of the compression itself. Now, there are many ways that this can be kind of worked on. This might be something along the lines of a difference between a feed forward or a feedback style compression, right? And the way it's described in the manual is that as you go up the spectrum here, it's kind of dialing in different characteristics from different vintage compressors. So this could be, basically FET, BCA, diode, Varimu. And although it's not designated that way, you can kind of dial through them, and it will give you a little bit more. I don't know. I kind of hear it a little bit more as a warming effect. That seems a bit more akin to like dialing in the amount of feedback kind of coming in, like a feedback style compression you get with like an API 2500 or something like that. Let's see. So we have that there. We have the meter over here. This can show the RMS level or gain reduction, right? So we'll see there, and you can get dual meters to sort of compare your output level to how much gain reduction you have. Down at the bottom here, we have an input gain control, right? So this will drive the amount of signal. There's a transformer emulation that's sort of built into this. So as you drive the input, it will drive that more. And then if you use the bias control, you can either add saturation or take away saturation from that, depending upon how you drive it in. If you hold the shift key, it will drive the input and simultaneously drive down the makeup gain. And that can actually be helpful for some things. Let's see, there is a sidechain filter here. I'll get to the overload. So the overload is basically allowing you to go into like a hyper compression mode where you get more exaggerated compression, but it still maintains the dynamics. So within whatever settings that you have, you can set that or drive that more just to kind of get a feel whether kind of overdriving or getting that feeling of overdriving the compressor may be beneficial. And then you have the wet dry control down here to compensate for that if you want to make it a parallel kind of thing. Now, there's an alternate feel also to a sidechain filter. Again, I'm not exactly sure how that works. Maybe it's just the shaping of the filter. It's a double, a two-stage or two-pole filter, high-pass filter that rolls off low frequencies, so you could set it there. And there's a soul switch. Now, fundamentally, what this is doing is kind of switching between a more analog characteristic, that would be the soul, or soul-less, which would be pure digital. Maybe that's not the best way to describe it, but then there's a look ahead feature, which you can enable here, so that'll give you a bit more faster response on transients. Makeup gain, that's pretty self-explanatory. Wet dry control, that's pretty self-explanatory. And output control, this is the output after everything. So there's a makeup gain control that feeds into the wet dry control, or the mix control, and then the output gain is after that on the back end. Over here, we have a dynamics, dynamic slider here, I guess is the way to describe it. And if you kind of pull this up, what you'll get is a bit of limiting on peaks is the way that it kind of looks. So you'll see if there are peaks that sort of stand out from others, this will be how sensitive it is to kind of capturing those as they stand out. So if there's some inconsistencies in the program material, live drums, that kind of thing, this can kind of help to, contain the transients so that you don't stand out too much. All right, so we have all of this. There's all kinds of other features up top here: bypass, pass control, phase inversion, sidechain, a hammer, which I don't fully understand. And there's a oversampling feature, the sub, which allows full frequencies to cut through. So on the side chain, it's not cutting off like sub frequencies, so that can help the responsiveness. And I'm forgetting off the top of my head what the HW is. There's also a limiter here, peak limiter, that's sort of built in at the very end stages to keep you from clipping. We'll show the amount of gain reduction here on the back end, and there's a couple of options here, including access to the user guide and et cetera, setting the default size. Let's get to work. Let's have a listen here. I will disable this one. Let's start with some drums and kind of work out the basics here. And let's see what we got. So I have a few things already set up. So let's start with it set up and then kind of play around with some alternate settings and see if we can take it from there. Maybe we'll do a comparison here to see if what I have it or where we ends up being a better place. Here we go. Right, so here, just with the settings here, how I can add in warmth, kind of control the peaks here a bit. The PSI is sort of an interesting one because you can hear the sort of warming effect of it, as I kind of pull it up. This is probably a bit too much for where I want to go, but if that's what you kind of need out of it, that would be the example for using it. So I can also drive the input a little bit here. Let's check that out. Right, just to kind of drive that in, to kind of bring in a little saturation. Let me bring this kind of back. All right, let's roll with that for a little bit without listening to it in the context of everything else, and then just kind of go on to a couple of other sounds. Here would be the bass. So here I'm using a bit of this to sort of drive a little bit more grit into the bass sound. Let's check that out. All right, let's copy this over and let's see if I can dial this in a little bit more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drive this a little less in, but bring in some of the bias. Let's see what that sounds like. I think I liked actually where I was better, so we'll kind of leave that alone. Just kind of with just a basic mix setting in there, just a little bit of this to kind of add some warmth in, but I think too much kind of leans into the muddy part of the sound. The one other thing I didn't do here was to check out the dynamics and see if this helps at all. Not sure I like that better either, but let's just have a listen to this with the drums and see how that mixes in. Okay, so I'll leave that alone. I think it was that the makeup gain was not set right, because with the input drive here was also driving a bit more level into it. So we'll kind of leave that. Let's move on to the acoustic guitars and see what we can do with acoustics here. Sometimes the graphics here on the Pro Tools side are a little bit sluggish here, so when you're seeing the bypass here, focus on this one here, because that's really what's going on. I'm going to try doing the dynamics here and also seeing if I can bring in a little bit of warmth here with it. Let's hear that in context, see which one stands out better. So you get two nice options here. With these extra controls, we can kind of get a bit of a tighter sound on the acoustics, which I think I'm going to go with here just to kind of stage the vocals and the electric guitars a bit more forward. But you also can get that open sound if you want the acoustic to kind of really drive the track. Let's go to some of the electrics, and I think there's one just quick thing that I'm going to do over here. Here, just to kind of keep it simple to the primary electric guitars here. Hold on. Here we go. So here, I'm going to copy this over here. So you notice here that I have a lot of PSI in here, right? So that's really kind of adding more to that density characteristic. But let's see if I have like a more open sound and kind of do something a little bit opposite of what I was doing with the others, where I'm driving this more and the others I had cleaner. So let's go a little backward here. Get the link off. right? Again, a lot of flexibility, all with the same attack and release settings, same knee settings, all the same basic stuff here. Working on a fast attack and a fast release with this, just to kind of make it breathe a bit. But with these extra controls, you can kind of really contain that or hold on to it, particularly with the PSI here. So let's see what happens here in the context of the rest of the track here. So that actually seems to draw forward, and I think the dynamics here on this kind of help to keep it a bit more contained, right? So it draws forward in a way that the A version doesn't. And because I switched off the acoustic guitars, that relationship now changes. Okay, so if I move beyond, I'll skip beyond keys. That's all pretty straightforward. But let's move on to the vocals, which is probably a bigger one to kind of take a closer look at. So I went with a lighter ratio here, no PSI here, hard knee, and relatively fast, actually kind of a medium attack on the vocal. 51 millisecond, that's definitely on the faster side. And no side chain filter, no driving or dynamics, but let's kind of play around with this one as well and see what we have here. I'll take the other tracks, meet them down here for a second, and let's hear the vocal in isolation.
Running fast, burning dust.
Hold on. I'm going to take out the harmonies here so we could just hear the lead in isolation here. And then, hold on, there's just a little bit of a bleed with something coming from the background. All right, let's see if we're good here.
Running fast, burning dust. Life ain't life without you. This midnight hour, time's a wasting. I'm racing back to be with you. To be with you. With you.
See if I can drive a little warmth into this with the PSI. Here we go.
Running fast, burning dust. Life ain't life without you.
Let's see what happens if I drive the overload here.
This midnight hour, time's a wasting. I'm racing back to be with you. To be with you. With you.
All right, let's hear that in the context of the rest of the mix. See which one works better.
Running fast, burning dust. Life ain't life without you. This midnight hour, time's a wasting. I'm racing back to be with you. To be with
Okay, so that actually really helps to kind of warm up the vocal a little bit, kind of fill it out, relative to the other stuff. And then we also have the background vocals, which I've added in here. So let's have a listen to the whole context with this. These only come in the chorus section, so maybe we'll just skip over to the chorus section and see what we got here. There we go.
With you, with you.
All right, so here, let me kind of mute down these other guys here for a second, and then I'll cue up that just so we can kind of pick up on that right quick here. Right, so I'll go back to where we were, and let's see, just kind of dial that in here. Right, so again, I can kind of get a more solidified sound here. A lot of control with this, beyond just the sort of normal like attack release stuff, because I think you'll find that pretty functionally just kind of a lot the way that you work with a normal compressor in terms of selecting ratio and all of those sorts of things. Where I think you get the benefit of this, though, is just the flexibility as you start to drive into deeper amounts of gain reduction and kind of working with the parallel and all of that. And just having these extra controls in here just to really just... And Pulsar Modular is really always amazing at this, at giving you these plugins that the more you actually use them, the more you start to find relationships between the different settings. And there's just like deep levels of subtlety in terms of the way that you can shape the sound. Just as you're seeing here, just with working with just these two additional controls beyond what normal compression controls would be, not even diving too much into the saturation itself. But let's check this out. Right, that just adds like a nice density there. Let's see what happens if I open these guys up and we hear this in the full context of the mix.
With you.
Right, so you can really hear how that just sort of solidifies those into place. This is a really cool one, and a great compliment to the Abyss compressor, the P11 Abyss compressor. This giving you just a lot of functional control and particularly tonal control. I think what is cool about it is that normally for tonal kind of processing, I'll go to vintage compressors, and I love, still using them. And when you really understand them and you understand what tonal colorations are available for you, then you select the right one accordingly. But often it will either work or it won't work. And to some degree, you can't kind of force it to work. What you get with this is something that allows you to have the controls of a digital compressor fully, but also have the ability to shape the tone and color in a way that you would by having sort of an amalgam of a lot of different vintage processors available to you. And I think that's really what sets this apart in many ways. It's not overly focused on the saturation. It's still giving you dynamic controls or the ways that different compressors work. Just as, PSI would give you the different functionality of the ways that a FET compressor might deal with the way it processes gain reduction versus the way that a VCA would, or a bridge diode, or a Veramute compressor, right? So opto, you get like all those kind of different tonal colorations and shapes and the way it kind of controls the sound. And this provides a lot of that flexibility in a cool way, and also the ability to control, here the dynamics, just to sort of tighten up the sound a little bit, control some of the peak energy. Lot of possibilities with this, and it sounds even better with the oversampling. I'm not going to drive that because my mix session is already a bit heavy for this right now, but to accommodate this across all these tracks. But otherwise, it really sounds amazing and absolutely, definitely worth checking out. Plugin of the week from Pulsar Modular, P19 Igloo, a recoil compressor. Check it out.